Well, first of all, he's been volatile his whole life. I mean, as a kid, or in 2018, he's going just as crazy at times as you see him in the past couple of years. When I started this book, when we first talked about it, it's a guy who was bringing us into the era of electric vehicles and the only person who could send American astronauts into orbit from the U.S. I thought, hey, good technology story. And then on the way, about a year into my reporting, he's secretly buying up Twitter and then going to Hawaii in a 2 or 3 night binge and deciding to take it over. So it became a hell of a lot more of a roller coaster ride then. And the dark strands in him, as well as the competent strands, are tightly woven together.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because there appear to be, from your book, there appear to be 2, 3, 4 different types of Elon.
Absolutely.
And like, for instance, when he made his decision on Twitter, it was after he played some video game all night.
Elden Ring.
Just sort of, yeah, just decided on a whim he was going to buy Twitter. Talk about that. You've got that guy contrasting with, you know, I don't know, the Thomas Edison of our time, or maybe, you know, the Steve Jobs or whomever. Talk about how those actually are sort of woven together in his character.
You know, that's a great question, because he has so many personalities, almost like multiple personalities. And it's a bit like his father, whom he doesn't speak to now. But his father is a Jekyll and Hyde, and sometimes goes very dark. And it happens to Elon, too. He'll go from being very giddy, or being in engineering mode, where he can figure out the valve of a Raptor engine. And suddenly the clouds come. And the amazing thing is, after he's gone dark and been demon-like and really tough on people, he'll snap out of it. And then I'll ask him, what was that all about? And he hardly remembers it. So when you ask about what's it like dealing with Elon Musk, I say, there are many Elon Musks in this book.
Well, listen, you know, we could say the same thing about Donald Trump. I mean, the Donald Trump that we knew. There are many Donald Trumps, too. And the thing that Donald Trump and Elon Musk share, and you point this out, is they're fathers. They are. Now, Donald Trump's never said that. But, I mean, if you spend any time around him, you realize, if not terrorized by the memory of his father hangs over him every day. And these two guys, Trump and Musk, are a lot alike, and they both seemingly are haunted by emotionally abusive, at the very least, fathers.
Absolutely. One of the rules of a biographer of a powerful person, especially a guy, is that sometimes all about dad. And it's true whether it's, you know, anybody I've written about. My very first book, I remember when you first started the show, was Albert Einstein. And you were kind enough to have me on way back then. And, you know, Einstein has a tough childhood, too, growing up Jewish in Germany with a father who's gone bankrupt. So I think, you know, I had a pretty easygoing childhood in New Orleans, which is why I'll never shoot rockets to Mars. But people who are, people who, like Obama writes in his memoirs, every great man, I think, he says, is either driven to live up to the expectations of his father or live down the sins of his father. And boy, with Musk, you have a dark father who is still jangling in his head.
Walter, what surprised you the most about the time that you spent with him, what you learned about him? Any preconceived assumptions that were blown to bits, or anything that you want to share on a personal level that you were sort of struck by?
Yeah, there are a couple things, some good things. For example, I was somewhat surprised by the intensity of his engineering focus. You'll see in the book sort of episode after episode of him figuring out why there's a methane leak, or let's go to stainless steel for the Cybertruck. And I thought he had delegated all that to people, but no, that's his best mode, is engineering. You know, what surprised me is the messiness of his interpersonal life, his inability to deal with emotional things, the problems he has with the mothers of his children, whether it's his first wife or Grimes or Siobhan Zillis. And this is a problem of buying Twitter, because I think it's different than making battery cells and rocket engines. It's he said, well, this is an engineering company. I'm thinking, no, it's not. It's a human emotion company that's trying to attract a good advertising environment. So that's why I think Twitter was not a great idea.
Well, and let's go to something else that you discussed that I think you said Elon Musk and those around him think he may be on the spectrum. He may have Asperger's. I know. I've spent a lot of time with people with Asperger's, and it's just the touch. I mean, they'll say things and they don't mean to be difficult. They don't mean to be rude. They don't mean to be this way or that way. There's just a disconnect emotionally, and it's almost like sometimes they have to read books to learn about certain human interactions. And so there's so many things he does that doesn't make sense. And part of that may be because he's on the spectrum. And I've just got to say, if you're on the spectrum, the worst thing for you to buy is Twitter, because it's not, you're right, it's not about engineering. It's not reasonable. It's not rational. It's everything
not logical.
But. It's all about touch.
Well, you're right. He jokes about, is open about having Asperger's. And as you know personally, and I know too, if you're on the autism spectrum, there's so many different variations of it. And he shows many of those variations. So it's not one thing. But in his particular case, having empathy and emotional relationships, that's not something that's encoded into him or that he does. He says he tried to learn it, just as you said, Joe, by reading books, but he's not good at that. And so it makes him a jerk. It makes him even, there's a technical term that begins with A that they use sometimes, but it is partly because he lacks that feel for empathy, which is a real downside, especially if you're going to buy a social network.
So, Walter, let's talk about, and congrats on the book.
Thank you, Jonathan.
His approach to what's happening in Ukraine. There's been some confusion as to what exactly he ordered with these Starlink communication satellites. There are times where he, on Twitter or X, whatever we're going to call it now, has regurgitated what seems almost like Kremlin talking points, and he's given license and freedom to those on his platform who do the same. So what exactly is he? How is he thinking about this conflict?
Well, he has a sort of a savior mentality, and when the invasion first happens, Russia invades Ukraine, it's amazing. All the Viasat satellites, all the military, all get knocked out, except for Starlink, his satellite thing. And you have to ask, why is he the only one that's working? And as a way, he sends 200, then 1,000 Starlinks so that the Ukrainian military can operate, and have all the text messages between him and Vice Minister Fedorov about how they would have just been totally blown away at the beginning if they hadn't had Starlink. However, there's a scene in the book when I'd spent a week with him, and I'm back in New Orleans at my old high school watching a football game with Jonathan Martin is sitting there with me, and my phone keeps going off. And it was the night that the Ukrainians were doing a sneak attack on the Russian fleet in Sevastopol. And he told me that he wasn't allowing Starlink to enable that. I got it slightly wrong. I thought he made the decision that night, but he said, no, previously they had geo-fenced off Crimea, but he didn't tell the Ukrainians that, so they thought it was working there. And that night, they're sending them all these messages. All these text messages are in the book of saying, you've got to let us use it in this fight against Crimea, against the Russian fleet in Sevastopol. And he doesn't. He says no. And at that point, I think he realizes he has too much power. I said, have you talked to Jake Sullivan? Have you talked to General Milley? And that's when he decides he's going to just sell some of these to the U.S. military and let the military, the U.S. government, determine how they're used.
Walter,
Yes, right.
as you know, there's been some controversy with Musk putting certain people back on Twitter, or now called X, and the civil rights community. Many of us have raised questions, including the Anti-Defamation League. He's now threatening to sue, saying they hurt some of his advertising dollars. Is it him being on the spectrum and part of that bipolar, if I can use that term, kind of nature, or more than bipolar, multiple polar, or is this guy a guy that foments division, even hate? I mean, how do we make of this guy? He's literally reinstated people who have been offensive to people of color, to women and others back on X or Twitter.
Yes, and it's a complex issue in which I don't particularly agree with him on things. I certainly think he's wrong to be attacking the ADL, because that's not the problem he has with Twitter. The problem he has with advertisers is they don't like being in an environment that you just described. That's toxic, that has people in it that way, and so advertisers have backed off. It's not the fault of the ADL. But you have to look at this balance that we have talked about so many times on this show, about how much of the aperture do you open to more dissenting speech, and how much do you try to make it safe and prevent misinformation or hateful speech on. He definitely not only has opened it to more speech of people who are on the fringe and people who can be toxic at times, he's even sometimes engaged with them. So I think he started off saying we should open it up to more free speech, but freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom of reach. We shouldn't amplify those who are the haters. And I hope eventually Linda Yaccarino, who is he got to be CEO of X, and himself, that they'll go back to saying we've got to not amplify people who are putting up really toxic and hateful things.
Yeah, Walter, I know you have to go. I have so many questions. I'd love to.
Hey, call
I think
me
we're
up.
going to have to have him back.
Yeah, I'll call you up. I wanted you to compare Steve Jobs to Elon Musk, but I think in the little time we have left, I'm going to ask you instead. You've been around him for a couple of years. Incredible access to Elon Musk. What is the why? I mean, we all know what he does. We know that you can't trade. But what is the why? What gets him out of the bed? What drives him? Why? What drove him from his beginning?
You know, when you got demons in your head, sometimes you turn them into drives. He has a bit of a hero complex. He said that he read comic books as a kid over and over again. And they were weird, these heroes. They were trying to save the world, but they wore their underpants on the outside. But at least they were trying to save the world. Yeah. And over again, he would tell me, I'm trying to get humanity to Mars. I'm trying to get us into sustainable energy. I'm trying to make AI safe. And I thought that was sort of the things that you pontificate on podcasts and pep talks. But I actually do think that's the main thing that drives him.
All right.
And by the way, Steve Jobs was the greatest innovator of our time. Elon Musk is a great innovator. They deserve separate biographies.
And they have them.
And they got them.
The new biography, Elon Musk, is on sale tomorrow. New York Times best-selling author Walter Isaacson, thank you very much. I think you're going to need to come back and talk about this more. The book is fascinating.
And Walter, I am now free to give you a call on this topic.
We have so much to ask.
And Meek and I certainly will.